Θα ξεκινήσουμε την επόμενη συνεδρία μας με τον κύριο Dirk Hendricks. Η παρουσίασή του θα είναι στα αγγλικά και στη συνέχεια θα στείλουμε την παρουσίασή του στους παριστάμενους. Ο Dirk Hendricks είναι Senior Policy Advisor της EREF. Η EREF είναι η Ευρωπαϊκή Συνομοσπονδία Ενώσεων ΑΠΕ των κρατών μελών και εστιάζει στο μετασχηματισμό του συστήματος παραγωγής της ηλεκτρικής ενέργειας στην Ευρώπη και λειτουργεί ως σύνδεσμος μεταξύ του Ευρωπαϊκού Κλάδου ΑΠΕ και των Διεθνών και Ευρωπαϊκών Ινστιτούτων και Οργανισμών. Ο Dirk είναι πάνω απ' όλα φίλος και έχει υπηρετήσει πολλά χρόνια ως Γενικός Γραμματέας της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης Μικρών Υδροηλεκτρικών, στην οποία ήμασταν μέλη, όταν στη συνέχεια η ΕΣΧΑ μετασχηματίστηκε σε κλάδο της EREF, μετεπήδησε εκεί, από όπου συνεχίζει και μάχεται για τα συμφέροντα των μικρών υδροηλεκτρικών σε ευρωπαϊκό επίπεδο. Dirk, the floor is yours.
Kalispera, Safa Ocharista Poli. My apologies that my Greek is not sufficient to hold the rest of the presentation in Greek, but I hope you bear with me. Thank you very much for the invitation to come here to tell you about the potential role of small hydropower in the new European electricity market. Before I'm going to do this, I just would like to quickly present my association, EREF, thanks. Which is actually the umbrella association for National Renewable Energy Association, and most importantly, what distinguishes us on the Brussels scene is that we represent the interests of independent power producers, something which is in these times very important to have. What we have is this, that within this association is a very strong small hydropower chapter. You see here our members that are coming from all the important small hydropower countries throughout Europe. We have currently also some new ones lined up, even from countries where you would not really expect... To the microphone, okay. What you would not really expect to have small hydropower associations, for example, in the Netherlands, but we see that this is nevertheless spreading. What we do is that for the moment we focus very much on the evaluation process of the so-called river basin management plans from the European Commission. And the outcome of this evaluation will then also determine if the Water Framework Directive, which is one of the key legislation for small hydropower development, will be revised or not at an earlier stage. To give you a very quick overview, you have heard from Kostas already before that when he showed the maps of the various countries. If you're going to look at the small hydropower chapter here, you have around 35,000 direct employees involved, around 4,200 enterprises throughout Europe. It's a sector that generates 3 billion euros of turnovers, and in particular, even it's a small hydropower, it still produces electricity for around 13 million households, which is around roughly 30 million people throughout the European Union. To the development potential, I'm going to say a little bit because there is still quite some possibilities. Now, as mentioned, we see that small hydropower development is in particular depending on two large legislation topics. On the one side, the Water Framework Directive, and on the other side here, the EU Energy Union, which also then includes the Renewable Energy Directive. What we unfortunately still see, if we're going to look at the various small hydropower sectors in each member state, is that we have unfortunately contradicting policies, not only at European level but also at national level. And this is something that with the new legislation that come in will hopefully now be addressed soon. You know it probably from your own experience when it comes to environmental legislation. Here, one of the key topics are certainly the permits for power plants, not only for new ones, but I mean also for ones where permits expires. I have heard that this is one of the key challenges here in Greece. There's another one, a big discussion going on about no-go areas against a kind of like site-specific approach for small hydropower plants. The other questions are who bears the investment costs, for example, for required environmental impact assessment or any kind of mitigation measures, like, for example, fish ladders. And also the so-called rest water or residual flow obligations. As I said here, with regard to the environmental topics, this will be very big on the Brussels agenda this year. In particular, next week, the European Commission will publish its sort of like evaluation report on this topic. And depending on this, we will see what kind of measures will be taken then within the next year, and specifically under the new commission that will be in by end of this year, in December this year. What I would like to talk in particular today is here the role of small hydropower in the new energy market in Europe. You see here the so-called EU Energy Union. Is now the new legislation framework for the next decade until 2030. And this is here should just illustrate that the Energy Union is also part of a much wider picture, and this is to sort of like more to bring Europe on a kind of like more sustainable path. And you see here that it goes very much hand in hand, for example, with circular economy, with investments schemes, with capital markets, and also in particular with job creation. If we're going to look now on what the new EU Energy Union is based on, you see here that we have the 2020 and 2030 targets. In particular, for 2030, the key ones are here, in particular, the 32% for renewable energy. This is an EU-wide target that should be reached by that time. We see already now, just last week, the latest figures where national member states stay with the 2020 figures. We see that there are quite some challenges ahead. Some countries have reached it already or are on a good path, but there are also other countries that have huge difficulties, like, for example, France, Germany, or the Netherlands. If you're going to look at it, how the new package that has been now debated for more than 4 years looks like, you see in particular the governance, which is kind of like the overarching framework, going into the 3 areas, mostly energy efficiency, renewables, and electricity market design. Energy efficiency is definitely one of the most important topics that needs to be addressed. Yes, we see that with the 2 new pieces of legislation, it's unfortunately not as ambitious as originally planned. We have the Renewable Energy Directive, which is then specifically on all different kind of topics for renewables. And this is then here also where we see now the contradictions with, for example, existing environmental legislation that now needs to be addressed, and of course the new design for a European internal electricity market, where we have 5 different legislations coming into place. To leave a little bit the legislation aside, what does it mean actually in practice? It means in practice that there is a huge endeavor to transfer the current various national energy markets that are mostly dominated by conventional energy, by a few market players, and that are central, to transform these kind in a European internal energy market that is characterized to be decentral, and which is mostly built on energy efficiency and renewable energy. With regard to renewable energy, it needs to be stressed that this means all different kind of sources, because if you look at the very ambitious goals that are at stake, you need to have all different kind of sources in place. What we see here is that in particular this decentralized energy market system comes with a multitude of independent power producers. We have also, in order to reach it, we have demand-side management, we have storage, sector coupling, which will play quite an important role, and for example, of course, the interconnectivity between national grids. Something which is enhanced here is also regional cooperation, in particular, be it on a kind of like more micro level, cross-border activities, or if you're going to look, for example, at the North Sea grid on a kind of like larger scale. The benefits for hydropower within this new energy system, and here we see that hydropower can play a major role within this new energy system, given the specific technical characteristic that it offers, mainly as the flexibility tool for the new energy system. You know this here probably better than I do: backup reserve capacity, quick start, black start capability, voltage support, spinning reserve, and then of course energy storage, which is unfortunately in the current debate, at least at EU level, very often overlooked. This is a study that has been carried out last year in Germany, and in particular at plants that are smaller than 1 megawatt. And you see that these small hydropower plants will become increasingly important for the future, because in particular they reduce grid losses, but I mean in particular they sort of like reduce the need for grid expansion, specifically at the distribution grid level. And just to see what kind of major impact, economic impact, these small hydropower plants can have, you see here that just for Germany alone, we have here around 1 billion euros of safe costs due to the specific services of small hydropower plants. Another thing is not only about system services, but small hydropower is also more and more an enabler for other renewables to come into the grid, to integrate in particular flexible or variable renewables, wind, solar, for example. And not to forget that we have here the multifunctional possibilities of small hydropower, water management, flood protection, and prevention of water scarcity. This is something that I would like to highlight, gives a kind of like classic example on how often decision makers unfortunately still overlook the possibility and also the potential of small hydropower. You see here, this is a reference scenario that the European Commission has used in the development of this new legislation. And what you see here is that the hydropower sector development is actually regarded as quite stable. This is unfortunately not true, because what you have is you have still enormous capacity to develop within Europe. Not only by refurbish existing plants, but I mean also if you look at the enormous number of abundant small hydropower plants, this is something else that can be tapped into it. And I mean, like for example, just here in Greece, it has been mentioned before, there is also still an enormous potential that can be looked into it. Again, what is now needed if you want to tap into this potential is that politicians and governments create the relevant stable framework conditions for hydropower. Why? It is a long-term investment. You have the multi-purpose function as mentioned. But I mean, in particular, again, all the different system services that small hydropower can develop, this is something that needs to be valued. And I mean, this is also one reason why we heavily lobby for specific payment for these energy system services to support small hydropower development. Now, within the new EU Energy Union, you have currently the development of national energy and climate plans. This is also ongoing in Greece. You have certainly heard about it. And here, in this case, I just encourage you to go to your politicians, go to your decision makers, and request them for example, for Greece, to really fully exploit the small hydropower potential that is existing here. What also needs to be is despite going or developing towards the goals for renewable energy, it is also in particular quite a good tool for employment, local added value, for local wealth, and it's definitely worth to be exploited. Thank you.
Dirk, thank you very much for your presentation. Ευχαριστούμε τον Dirk για την παρουσίασή του. Θα εστιάσω σε δύο σημεία από αυτά που είπε. Το ένα είναι ότι συμμετέχει ο EREF στην πολύ σημαντική αναθεώρηση της οδηγίας πλαίσιο για τα νερά, της Water Framework Directive, η οποία θα επηρεάσει πολύ την εξέλιξη του κλάδου στη χώρα μας, γιατί η οδηγία αυτή στην πραγματικότητα θέλει να συζεύξει τις διάφορες χρήσεις των νερών, των υδατίνων σωμάτων, να προστατεύσει την ποιότητα των υδατίνων σωμάτων και αν σκεφτεί κανείς ότι στις βόρειες ευρωπαϊκές χώρες έχει αξιοποιηθεί το 80% των σωμάτων αυτών και μένει ένα περίπου 20% αναξιοποιητό, το βάρος θα πέσει κυρίως στην προστασία των εναπομεινάντων ποταμιών. Αν αυτό σαν γράμμα έρθει και περάσει στη δική μας νομοθεσία, σημαίνει ότι το 85% των ποταμιών που είναι αναξιοποιητά στην Ελλάδα αυτομάτως θα πάνε σε ένα καθεστώς αρκετά αυστηρής προστασίας που θα μειώσει δυνητικά την ανάπτυξη του κλάδου. Το δεύτερο στο οποίο θέλω να εστιάσω είναι πολύ ωραία μελέτη του Πανεπιστήμιου του VERDE.TEC, την οποία μας έδειξε και νομίζω, κύριε Πρόεδρε, είναι μια καλή ιδέα να γίνει κάτι παραπλήσιο και στην Ελλάδα για τον κλάδο των μικρών υδροελεκτρικών. Μια μελέτη η οποία να αναδεικνύει τα πλεονεκτήματα του συστήματος από την ύπαρξη και ανάπτυξη των μικρών υδροελεκτρικών, πέρα από το κατασκευαστικό κόστος αυτό καθ' αυτό της κάθε τεχνολογίας, επάνω στην οποία μελέτη τεκμηριωμένα να βασίσουμε την επιχειρηματολογία μας για την περαιτέρω ανάπτυξη του κλάδου στην Ελλάδα. Ευχαριστούμε για μια φορά ακόμα τον κύριο Dirk.